Gentlewoman yields. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Carter, for 5 minutes for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Protecting communities from PFAS, so-called forever chemicals, is a matter of public health and environmental justice. PFAS are man-made chemicals that do not break down in the environment or the human body. They accumulate over time in our water, soil, and bloodstreams. They're linked to serious health harms, including cancer, reproductive complications, and weakened immune systems in children, among others. Nowhere is this issue more urgent than in fence-line communities, especially in places like the one that I represent in Louisiana, which has the unfortunate moniker of Cancer Alley, where families live next door to petrochemical plants and industrial facilities. These communities, disproportionately Black, working class, already face higher exposure to toxic air and water pollution. PFAS contamination only compounds those risks. Strong federal protections matter because PFAS pollution doesn't respect state lines. We need clear standards, rigorous monitoring, and enforcement authority. I understand that there are real concerns about liability for so-called passive receivers, entities that may receive hazardous substances, including PFAS, through wastewater or recycled materials, but do not manufacture or use those substances themselves. I want to continue working with this committee on that issue, but in a way that doesn't weaken protections, but strengthen them for the communities that are most impacted. Rolling back rules doesn't make chemicals safer. It just makes exposure easier and accountably harder. For communities like mine, delays mean more years of exposure, more preventable illnesses, and more families forced to choose between staying in their homes and protecting their health. Ms. Donovan, can you describe how PFAS contamination has affected your community's health, access to clean drinking water, and overall quality of life?
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought up the point about fence line and frontline communities and the environmental justice concerns, because there is the cumulative impact of all of this that needs to be addressed. There is a community that lives right beside the Sampson County landfill, which is where Chemours sends its waste, or it was documented as sending its waste for a very long time. This community is not only now dealing with contamination problems coming from this waste landfill, but they're also dealing with hog farm waste that they've had to litigate. They are constantly in litigation just to try and protect their way of life and where their zip code is, and it's not fair. We have private well owners in Brunswick County that are just now finding out that their wells were contaminated by Chemours 7 years later, all the way 80 to 90 miles downstream from the actual facility. And it was because the municipality had contaminated water, which has now contaminated the groundwater of the area. Think golf courses, think just irrigation, think all of that. And we are working through, but the state environmental department is working with Chemours through the consent agreement to force Chemours to pay for that cleanup. We are seeing communities, there's a Black community, a predominantly Black community called Rock Hill in Wilmington, North Carolina, and when developers come in and create new homes, they are bypassing the ability to give this community access to municipal water that is cleaner than the groundwater that has been contaminated again by PFAS. And so there is a struggle and a fight to make it equitable and just for this community to access a better opportunity for water now that it's available.
Can I interrupt you just for a moment, because I only have a few seconds left. I really want to ask you about RCRA. We know that the Resources Conservation and Recovery Act under the Biden administration was working toward coming up with ways to deal with this. How would RCRA, cradle-to-grave waste management model, provide your community with a sense of security, knowing that PFAS waste are properly managed and maintained through the life cycle?
Yeah, I mean, we have, we know that there are tanker trucks that leave Comores constantly. We've seen spills that have happened, but they don't get reported. It's been voluntary, eye-on-the-ground observation from the very communities that's being contaminated with the air releases that are having to call regulators and say, hey, we took some pictures of this spill. That would have been documented. We also worry, again, like, where is the land application of the sewage sludge that we know is contaminated? Where is that going? There needs to be a whole system to understand that. And again, this isn't an issue about liability.
And my time has expired. As I do, Mr. Chairman, I just want to close with this. We know this, that if the big polluters are left to their own devices, they won't report. They'll continue to take the path of least resistance, which is to continue to contaminate communities. That's why committees like this and people like you coming to testify strengthen our hand in making sure that we are insisting that if coexistence is to happen, it
Gentleman's
can
time
only happen when communities are made safe. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your generosity and time. I yield.